command you fly?
Fly? Yes. Land? No. Hi, I'm Sam Stone, and welcome back to another episode of Power Up, presented by Razer. Few game franchises have pushed the boundaries of what the medium can do more than the Microsoft Flight Simulator series. Since it launched on PC in 1982, Microsoft Flight Simulator has been one of the chief innovators in the industry, in terms of both presentation and the technological feats required to make a realistic flight simulator tick. And the latest 2024 installment takes things to a whole other level. In our very first Power Up Adventure Mode episode, we hopped over to the Grand Canyon to not only play Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, but to do some real-life flying of our own. Plus, get ready for a bonus level interview later in the show with executive producers Tim Miller and Dave Wilson. You may know them as the creative duo behind Love, Death, and Robots, as they talk to us about the making of Prime Video's Secret Level, a video game adaptation unlike any you've ever seen before. Now sit back, plug in, and power up. In order to truly appreciate the authenticity of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, I had the opportunity to compare it to the real thing. That's right, I went to Arizona and got to actually fly a real G2 Plus Vision jet over the Grand Canyon. And since I'm telling you this now, you can deduce I didn't crash while looking out at the beautiful panorama below. Microsoft Flight Simulator features highly detailed maps and environments that are just as breathtaking as the real thing. So even if you can't hop into a real-life cockpit, Microsoft Flight Simulator is the next best thing.
And there's a Vision jet coming. 1 mile flying.
Power Up recently got an extended hands-on with a pre-release build of the game before sitting down to chat with the developers. Microsoft and Asobo Studio revived the franchise with its predecessor in 2020. And not only does Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 feel like a natural evolution of the series, but stands as the most expansive title in the franchise ever, rather than a marginal leap forward. And while adding a whole bevy of new missions and aircraft to fly, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 maintains the authentic feel and attention to detail that has made the series such a critical success. For the new installment, Asobo pulled out all the technical stops to improve the Microsoft Flight Simulator formula by leaps and bounds. To start, Asobo built a digital double of the world to function in real time, constantly reflecting not just the time of day at a given location, but replicating climate conditions based on the time of year and how it impacts flight. The team used everything from satellite imagery and aircraft scanning landscapes to bring their digital version of our world to life in the flight simulator. The goal, Asobo CEO and co-founder Sebastian Wallach tells us, is to make this digital recreation of our world as accurate as possible. The most striking thing about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, however, isn't the significant upgrade to its presentation, but the abundance of new features and game modes. 2024 is the first game in the series to feature a career mode, photography mode, mission mode, and challenge mode, complete with online leaderboards. Players create their own custom character in the simulator's central hub, and choose how they want to proceed, from the new modes to old standards like free flight mode. Tentative plans for these additions were in the works dating back to before the completion of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, before being revived and incorporated based on user feedback. There are 3 million unique mission types for users to engage in, from search and rescue missions to crop dusting open fields. This, coupled with a range of difficulty levels and the vast amount of aircraft to choose from, results in an experience that players can get completely immersed in. When we chat with Asobo CCO David Dedine, he's quick to point out that the team didn't just emphasize the number of things to do in the game, but the quality of those activities. The team worked to make each type of mission believable, according to Dedine. Of course, a flight simulator is nothing without its selection of aircraft for users to choose from, and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 has an impressive array available at launch. There are 70 aircraft available in the Standard Edition at launch, with even more aircraft available day one with the Deluxe and Premium Deluxe editions. This includes propeller planes, jet planes, commercial and military-grade aircraft, hot air balloons, airships, gliders, and bush planes. For the gliders and bush planes in particular, Asobo ensured these experiences felt as detailed and realistic as possible. With gliders, users feel every change in wind current and the impact weather conditions have on flying, in addition to landing on the more meticulously rendered terrain. One of the slickest aircraft in the game isn't even technically completed yet in real life, with the experimental bush plane, the Draco X, included in the playable roster. To include the prototype in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, Support Studio Got Friends worked closely with Draco X creator Mike Pate, testing out the prototype in the simulator as Pate shared information from his own real-world development. As project lead Brandon Yeager puts it, this unique approach has allowed for lots of experimenting and innovation within the game and in real life. After a 14-year hiatus, Microsoft Flight Simulator returned bigger and better than ever under Asobo Studio, and the team is looking to soar even higher with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. In going bigger, Asobo worked to ensure the game still felt accessible to new users. Chris Burnett, co-founder of Support Studio Working Title Simulations, notes that being on the Xbox platform certainly helps when it comes to letting new players dabble with the game. That bigger ecosystem played a key role in informing the development of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. The enormous user base for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 allowed Asobo to collect plenty of feedback on the game's performance, as well as what the fanbase wanted from a sequel. The result was a healthier and more personally rewarding development cycle, according to head of Microsoft Flight Simulator Jorg Newman. We could definitely see the benefits of that development cycle during our time with the game, a flight simulator as epic as you could possibly ask for on modern platforms. We've loved what we've played so far, and are looking forward to seeing what else Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 can do when it hits PC and Xbox Series XS on November 19th. So for the past several episodes, we mentioned how Razer Cortex and Razer Axon can completely level up your gaming experience. This week, we've got Dwight Kwok, the global head of growth for Razer Software, here to talk all about it. Well, Dwight, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Let's start with the big picture. What's the one thing that you wish more people knew about Razer Cortex?
Beyond its universal game launcher capability, it actually packs way more punch than that, right? Most recently, we launched the add-ons marketplace, and we are seeing some tremendous result. I'm definitely biased, I represent Razer, but then let the number speaks for itself, right? So just last month, we are looking at some 18 million people using it just in one single month. More and more users come back, and there are also more partners wanting to be on this marketplace. Hopefully, we will continue to grow this into something that's going to help our gamer enhance their gaming experience, and that's exactly our goal.
Since the launch of Razer Cortex, what's the one thing that excites you the most about the future of Razer Cortex?
We'll continue to think and create more of these additional hooks to provide value for our gamers. And this is more importantly, not just for the gamer within the Razer ecosystem, right? One thing about Razer Cortex and all of our, what we call the standalone software, not only that our customers within the Razer ecosystem can use them. If you're not a Razer hardware owner, you can also download it and take advantage of those too.
Shifting over to Razer Axon, what do you think is the most exciting feature for first-time Razer Axon users to really dig into?
I really think that the element of creativity, the creation, with which we have introduced early on last year, really set us apart as a wallpaper application. Right? Within the gaming communities, we also know that gamers are very creative, creators themselves as well. Right? By allowing and pairing, for example, the AI, generative AI creativity, tool suite, or when you are a professional, allowing you to upload your own work, so that we can actually pair it with some of our special sauce, the Razer RGB lighting, the Chroma RGB lighting effect. That really enhanced, that level of creativity. And that is, I think, the unique angle and element that what we're really excited about.
We've seen PC gaming styles evolve so much. It's creativity coming in at the speed of light. What do you think Razer Axon's role in that is, especially as we look to the future of PC gaming?
How do they reimagine, what gaming and creativity really is? I think that's very, very important. Most recently, we also released what we call the music wallpaper category. We have paired up with some of the larger online record labels such as Lo-Fi Girl, Monster Cat. These are labels and brands that the gaming community are already very familiar with. That's just also another way of bringing out an additional angle of creativity element to it. A lot of the indies artists, right, or creators, they are actually coming to us. Can I be part of this community? Even though I'm not a professional, even though I'm not a professional business, can I leverage Razer Axon as a springboard to showcase my work, my portfolio? There's a strong sense of community forming, right? And then now Razer Axon is becoming a platform or a springboard, for creators. And I think this is very, very exciting. That's also another way to enhancing and enabling, right, the gamer community.
And again, for people that are more interested in checking out Razer Axon and Razer Cortex, please check Razer.com to see all about it and try it out for yourselves. Dwight, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thanks, guys.
Thank you to Razer for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to the show.
Come in. You have a game to play.
Dave, Tim, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Our pleasure.
Yes, it is.
So you guys have plenty of experience with the anthology format through Love, Death, and Robots. How is it taking that to the video game world and different games with every week, with every episode, with Secret Level?
The anthology format goes back even further than I would say than Love, Death, and Robots. If you know anything about Blur, which is our studio that's been around for almost 30 years at this point, our bread and butter has always been these 3-5-minute trailers for a plethora of video games over the years. So like the anthology format really started there, like short form storytelling. I've only done one of Love, Death, and Robots episodes. It was Sunny's Edge in volume 1. And I remember when Tim was like, "You've got 15 minutes. It felt like I had a whole movie's worth of runtime compared to the sort of 3 or 5 minutes we used to get, although we never really stuck to that. We would be given 3 minutes, and then I remember we did some stuff for Elder Scrolls 2, and that expanded up to 6-7 minutes, and it was always a battle to maintain it. But
60 minutes for Halo.
The
redo of the Halo. So we get up there.
But that's it's very much a part of Blur's DNA is the sort of short form storytelling of it. So it's a little trickier in that on Secret Level there's so much lore to pull from, whether it's D&D or Warhammer. There's 40-50 years of that. So I think it's the trick there is figuring out what's important, what fans want to see, and then trying to fit that into what we have to work with.
I would add, just on the anthology of it all, it used to be when we first did Love, Death, and Robots, which grew out of heavy metal, the idea that every story was going to be different was largely seen as a drawback. Even though as a creative person, I'm like, oh fuck, you mean I get to do? Can I say fuck? I can say. Okay, good.
Can you talk without saying?
Yeah, it would cut half of my vocabulary. Sorry, where was I? No, the idea that every story would be a new thing, and every story would be a new creative reset of the clock was just super fucking exciting because doing a movie or a larger project, sometimes even as much as you love it, it's a 2-year project, or it's 18 months or even longer, and this is an opportunity to change it up creatively every few months. They take longer than that, but
Well, you've got quite the murderer's row for this first season. I mean, you've got Mega Man, but you've also got more recent things like New World Eternum. You've got, you've got the Outer World, everything. D&D, like you were saying, Warhammer 40K. Like, how was it? I mean, working with all these different game developers and publishers, and kind of like, getting the licensing just down for this season and making sure all those properties were beautifully well represented.
The licensing of it is not easy. I will say, though, it's like that is what made it easier, but it wasn't easy, is that because we've been doing this so long with Blur, there is a sort of inherent trust that we're not going to sort of trample all over their IP. I think with anything we do, our goal is we're standing on the shoulders of these franchises that have been around for decades, and all we want to do is leave them in a better state than we found them, right? So we're just borrowing them for this sort of little moment in time. But that trust was sort of paramount. There's a lot of the way the show is structured and how it was built. Tim can talk to that, but it was not an easy process at all. Why we picked who we picked? It's complicated, and it's also because of the structure of the show. There's a sort of mutual benefit for everyone. It's it was structured in a way where not everyone. We have 15, 10, and 5-minute episodes, but we wanted it to represent indies and nostalgia titles, not just AAA sort of franchises out there. But yes, as to the process.
And we always knew it would be a mix of new games, current blockbusters, and like Dave said, we wanted to do nostalgia and indie games because we wanted to represent the whole community. If I had my way, we'd have board games in the show, but I don't see any reason why it has to be restricted to just it's really like, what does the community enjoy in terms of game playing? Video games is great, but all of gaming is valuable, and it's sort of the community that plays video games also does these other things. And then I'll just say it took Amazon having the vision to say, look, we don't need to do a land grab to make a show like this, because everybody knows, or maybe you don't, that Hollywood is a very acquisitive place, and so they want to own and control everything if they're going to invest money in it. And Amazon said, look, we understand these are huge games, and they exist in their own right, and we're just borrowing them for a while, and they made the deal making easy, which could have been a nightmare. And it was only a bad dream. I mean, anytime you get lawyers and contracts is sometimes tricky. But Amazon, their willingness to say, "Look, we're just going to play in your sandbox for a while," made it really possible.
One property in one of the episodes that I saw that goes both video games and tabletop is Warhammer 40K, and telling the story of like Space Marines in less than 20 minutes, highlighting how badass and unstoppable they can be in the field of battle. While, some of the action sequences there are some of the best action sequences that I've seen you do. I've seen you do like the Arkham trailers, and so, that's really, there's a high pedigree there. How is it telling a story of Space Marines within just that, that 20-minute, even if it feels like a movie compared to a 5-minute spot, how is it doing that in less than 20 minutes?
Dave directed the Warhammer spot, just by the way, and Blair did the CG sound.
Yeah. And it goes, first of all, it's not easy, and I'm gonna go off on a tangent here because I love Warhammer a lot. 20 years ago to the year, it was 2004. I'm sitting at my desk, and Tim comes over to me, and he's like, "Man, I think it was Relic at the time that we were doing. The Dawn of War was a RTS Warhammer game, and they were like, they wanted the trailer, but they only have 4 weeks. So I told them we can't do it. And I was like, pick the phone back up and fucking tell them we can make it. Typically back then, it would take 4 months to make a trailer. Like now it's closer to sometimes 8 months. So we'd never done anything like that. And I took a lot of shit for saying we could do it. But like it was this amazing moment in time where like the sort of Navy SEALs of our studio came together. We pulled the best from every other, we do multiple shows at a time. And they all came together to make this trailer. And even to this day, we get folks who are like, I got in the industry because of that trailer. And not for lack of trying, we haven't done anything Warhammer related for 20 years, right? So this Tim was like, hey, come back and run.
Oh, yeah, we did the fantasy. We did the fantasy stuff
40K,
after that.
Yeah, 40K. We hadn't done anything 40K related. And Tim said, come back, run the show with me. And Warhammer was one of the first in the door, and I was like, oh man, yes. Why is it the way it is, and how do you tell that? Like, I love the folks at Games Workshop, Andy Smiley over there, and Aaron Dembski-Bowden, who we worked with. You know, it was finding the right story is difficult, but ultimately we settled on, and we look at the episode as sort of a violent tone poem for what Warhammer is. Like, trying to pick a race or pick a mission or even wherever it's taking place is almost impossible. So we were like, how do we just sort of encapsulate the tone of what Warhammer is in one 15-minute episode? It's tricky because there's such an intense doctrine to what Warhammer is. And your heroes have to make choices. And so we were like trying to find a way where in this like very strict regime, like there are characters who make choices is difficult. And so that was ultimately we settled on, like if you watch it multiple times, you may come away with the idea that there's this underlying message of, can we control what our children become? And like and weirdly through the lens of Warhammer. But they like
Dave always has to have this like touchy-feely core, and like everything he does, it's like saccharine sweet in a good way. But I will say just the depth of the lore. I'm not a Warhammer fanatic, but the depth of the lore is such. Well, I think the great thing that Dave did here, and it's a weird thing, like how to not break the surface tension of this, but for the fans, they'll feel like it's true, even though they know everything about Warhammer. But for the uninitiated, they can just sit back and let it wash over them. It's not exposition heavy, but you also don't feel lost because you're not, you haven't invested years of your life in the franchise. And it really is. I showed it to someone and I said, listen, you're not going to understand this, and I don't either, but just it's fucking beautiful. Just let it wash over you and enjoy it. And they did.
There's the famous 40K saying is, and they shall know no fear, right? But I'm like, they have to.
Oh my God, that was super nerdy. Go ahead.
What? It is.
It's the brand. It's the brand.
And it's the title of the episode. Like, and if we're not super nerdy, then I want to meet those people.
We shouldn't be doing the show.
There is some. I mean, another episode I got to see, and I think a lot of the secret of this is like a lot of these stories kind of start in media res, so you always just kind of hit the ground running. I was been playing Unreal since like the Dreamcast, and I remember like talking to my friends like, hey man, check out like the fire effects on this thing. Like Doom could never like do this. Like how was it like finding this almost like Spartacus kind of story within the world of Unreal Tournament for this series?
I think Tim did the last pass on that script, but we worked very closely with Epic on that. They have a sort of story team at Epic that we worked with, and typically in the show, our process is we bring authors in to sort of mimic the style of Blood, Death, and Robots. We struggled to find a story with that, so we sort of got in a room with Epic to figure it out. But we've been playing that game too for years. At Blur, we always used to have a lunchtime Quake game, but for a while, Unreal Tournament sort of usurped that, and we played Unreal for a while.
And Descent, and Duke Nukem. Yeah. A lot of games had their day. And I'll just say, like Dave's experience with Warhammer, and there's a few other games that he will probably bring this up with, but our creative director, Frank Balson, who at Blur, who directed the Unreal Tournament short, for him that game was that game. And a lot of us have that game in our past where it's like, this is the one that I remember. It's synonymous with my good feelings about growing up and being with my friends and hanging out. And for him, Unreal Tournament was that game. A lot of it is like how old you are, like where you hit it. For me, it was Wolfenstein, but it's different for everybody.
But why the Spartacus story is, Zan in the game is a villain, and always sort of, I think it's one of the things we wanted to do about Secret of is tell the stories that you're not familiar with the game, and we don't just want to retread the same ground. So it was like, where does Zan come from? Like, what made him him? And so we knew we wanted to pick an iconic character. We played around with Malcolm for a little bit and a couple of other characters, but ultimately settled on Zan, and we wanted to show an audience like where he came from, what made him him, in a sort of very ex machina way. He sort of learned from us.
And you guys can check it all out starting December 10th on Prime Video. Again, that's Secret Level. And I'm Sam Stone. Here we are, Den of Geek.
Wait, that's it?
I know, man.
Come on.
I would love to.
We came all this way for an interview, and that's...
We keep rolling.
We have so many more answers to the questions you don't have.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, thanks for swinging by. That's a wrap on this episode of Power Up. It was a pleasure talking to Tim and Dave about Secret Level. We're particularly excited to check out that Warhammer 40k Space Marine episode. And thank you to Xbox and Asobo Studio for inviting us to check out Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. And of course, this episode wouldn't be possible without the support from our friends at Razer. As always, make sure to like and subscribe below and let us know your thoughts about the episode in the comments. Until next time, I'm Sam Stone, and this has been Power Up.